This podcast is brought to you by the Islamic Center and NYU. For more information, visit our website at www.icnyu.org.
والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. First of all, assalamu alaikum. It's nice to see everybody again after yesterday. There's quite a few people here, subhanAllah. So it's good. It's been a long time. The space has been empty. I don't know if anyone here speaks Persian and say, Jayesh Khali. Your place is missing. Every time I would come in, it's like everybody's place is missing. It's very strange. And I think the first Jum'ah we did with Imam Khalid, I think it was like 8 people here maybe. It reminded us of our beginnings with MSA, or from the early. I'm much more older than him, but the early 90s when most of you then takunu shay'an mafkura, and before most of you were even born. Before we get started, I think we should do an icebreaker because everybody's really scared for some reason, even with your mask on. It's like deers in the headlights. So I apologize if I've created a temperature of intimidation. That's certainly not what we want to have here. So let's do an icebreaker, especially for the people in the back. We're going to do an icebreaker, no pressure. And that is, what's your gangster name?
What?
Yeah. What's your gangster name? But this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do your gangster name. Your gangster name is the color of shirt you're wearing and then what you ate last. So like mine would be plaid coffee. I'm plaid coffee. Right? So that would be my gangster name. I did this with my wife a few weeks ago, and I was orange biryani. It's not a very intimidating gangster name. Right? And she was beige chipotle. No one can use the honest chops, okay? Enough of this honest chop stuff. Wonder what we're eating tonight. No, I'm just joking. But seriously, so let's hear it. What's your gangster name, bro?
Quinoa.
Huh?
Blue quinoa.
So we got blue quinoa in the house. MashaAllah. All right. In the back, yes. The super awesome blue mask bound. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. What's your name, by the way?
Oh, Rayhan.
Rayhan. And your name? Lamisa. Okay, excellent. Lamisa, let's hear it. Black and white chicken. Wow. Anyone else want to volunteer their gangster name? Yes. Blue cereal. Sounds like a podcast, man. Blue cereal. All right, nice. Who else wants to go for it? Their gangster name is color. What you asked? Yes, sir.
Black chicken gyro.
Black chicken gyro. And your name too, sorry. Wafa. Okay. Omar. Nice. Black chicken gyro. It's incredible. I'm starting to get scared. Some hardcore names here. Sound like Sopranos. Who else is ready to jump in with their? So we're introducing our gangster names based on color that we're wearing and the thing that we just finished. The last thing we ate. Who else? Yes, sir.
I guess I'm Black Nahari.
Black Nahari.
Yeah.
Wow. What's your name?
Sean.
Sean. Nice, man. That's good. That's good. Who else is ready? Yes. You ready?
Sure.
Navy blue donuts certainly spawns feelings of intimidation. Yes, ma'am. White. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
I'm Fatima.
Fatima. And? Lama. Nice. White Five Guys. That's incredible. You got your hand up? Go for it, man. Pink chicken rice. This is good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Although I think white Five Guys so far. And the blue donut is real. Who else wants to share with us their new gangster moniker for the year? Real. The ICNYU saga. Anyone else wanna give it a shot? Awesome. So that was fun. It was a little cringy, but it was still kind of cool at the same time. Alhamdulillah. So I think what's important for me is for you to teach me. And I know, when I was sort of like your age, I converted to Islam when I was 20, through the music business in the studio with a friend who actually claimed to be Muslim. And we used to smoke copious amounts of marijuana. And he would bring a Quran into the studio. And, I would see this. I was like, man, this is a big book. I don't know if anyone remembers, if you have parents that are, old enough, there was a print of the Quran that came out like in the 40s and 50s. It's like this big. It's massive, right? So I was like, man, what's bringing like tomes to the studio, dude? And he's like, that's the Muslim Bible, right? I was like, Muslim Bible? It's like, yeah, the Quran. And then there was a rapper named MC Quran that used to come and like rap. So it was through that, and then having a friend in high school that was very close to me who was actually Muslim, that I was like exposed very young, in my early teens, mid-teens actually, to Islam, and then eventually embraced Islam when I was like my freshman year in college. So I remember, the first year going to Friday prayers and saying like, man, this guy, he doesn't talk about anything that's important to my life. And not as like a pejorative, but just as like I need that. Like I want my religion to be like relevant to my experiences. And then when I requested the person to maybe mix up the playlist, so to speak, I got us some trouble and learned the hard way. But I want to hear from you. Like, feel free to ask me anything, right? But my question to you is, what would you like me to talk about? Or what would you like me to do with you? So that way, throughout the year, if I'm doing something, you can no longer say, like I used to say, man, I wish this guy would talk about something that was relevant to my life. Because here I am asking you to teach me. And I think we don't do this enough. When I was an imam years ago, I don't know if anyone here's from Boston, home of the greatest basketball team ever invented. Who's your basketball team? No. Oh, wow. You were not a Nets fan 3 years ago, bro. You know you were not a Nets fan 3 years ago. Who were the starting five 3 years ago?
Nets. I know. He also was on there.
See, that's what I'm saying. There's fans, and there's... Okay. MashaAllah. And you got a little upset when I said Boston Celtics? Okay. Were you a Golden State Warriors fan? Like,
Yeah.
always. Okay. 408-510. I used to live there. I'll give you that. I'm not gonna. I have an appreciation for the Golden State Warriors. Amazing. So, what would you like? Like, if you were to make a religious teacher, what would they teach that would invigorate you and encourage you to sort of be part of that process? Or what would they learn also? Yeah, so it's not just a one-way street. So that's my question. Teach me. I have a 20-year-old daughter. She's in Malaysia. I have trouble keeping up sometimes with the pace. And she likes to tell me, I'm not a convert. I don't know how many of your kids or people who embrace Islam. I'm not as crazy about this as you are, man. I didn't have the epiphany, which is always a great conversation to have. So it's funny when your 19-year-old is telling you to slow down. Well, you should think of it. And I learned a lot from her, a lot of wisdom about being a parent. So let's make the perfect prototype Sheikh for college students. Here we go. Pressure's on. Who's going to start? Yes, sir.
Yes, you already do, but the willingness to learn.
Why is that important to you guys? A willingness to learn. Why is that? Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Because even though these texts and these teachings are grounded and foundational, the world we live in is constantly changing.
Oh.
We're learning about people navigating that. That's constantly changing.
Okay. So the ability to kind of synthesize cultural competency with like religious acumen. Second quote. All right, good. I'm glad we're recording this because I'm not taking notes. Actually, I can take notes. I have my phone. Who agrees with him? Everybody hear what he said? The ability to marry the heavens and the earth. Right? How does that happen? Right? Sometimes we live in the clouds. It's great, alhamdulillah. But then it's like, get down to earth, and then where is it? And the opposite too, right? Sometimes people want to make religion cool to the point that there's no religion left. That's also a challenge. Like, yeah, you don't have to pray, no problem. MashaAllah, I'm bringing the youth to Islam. You're bringing them to Islam. One of the old heads from Brooklyn used to tell me there's Islam and Islam. And we need to be careful of that. Excellent. Who else wants to build on that or to expand on it? Yes, ma'am. And can you please say your name? I'm just trying to learn everybody's names. Zainab. So bringing in a tension, kind of a tone of, like a narrative. Narratives are very important. So marrying the heavens to the earth, personal narrative. Excellent. Thank you, Zainab, for sharing that. Yes, ma'am. Oh, man, yeah. Balance. You know where I had trouble balancing schoolwork in Islam? Was at Al-Azhar in Egypt. At a religious university. Because the Arabic is not my first language. I'm from Oklahoma. English is very, very, almost not my first language. Right? We have our own kind of dialect. But I remember being so busy in religious studies that I couldn't go to Tarawih. I was like, man, this is weird. Like, I remember in college, when I did my undergraduate education, like, finals time would come around, I'd have to pray in the library. And, sometimes I had to join prayers just because professors aren't like, Assalamu alaikum. They're like, why are you late? So I experienced that actually at a greater degree at a religious institution. That's hard. And then, my family relies on me. So when you have family that also relies on you when you're young, that's also something we don't talk about sometimes. And balance and all that. And then I had all these friends that were like, why don't you go to the club no more? From the bar to the men bar. How did that happen? Excellent. That's nice. I really, so when you share with me, that allows me to feel, it's going to sound strange, comfortable with you. We tend to create this setting in masajid where it's very one way. But teachers are also vulnerable. Right? I'm a lot older than you guys. I'm like, man, I hope I don't say something crazy, or something that's generationally appropriate for my era and not for this era. And my wife's like, it's okay, don't worry. Right? So we all have our own inhibitions. And when we have like real meaningful conversation, then we develop an understanding of each other, and then we can even advise one another, right? And help each other. Amazing. Who else is ready to share? So for those of you who just walked in, I don't feel comfortable just like teaching. Right? I don't necessarily like that dynamic. I think that you have to earn people's respect before you can earn their ears. So ours is about what is the prototype effective religious teacher. So we're building this right kind of idea. That's going to help me as I build my relationship with many of you. There are students that have gone to NYU who still, like Mariama texted me from Abu Dhabi. Like Mariama was like, do you know where I am? I'm like, you're in the Bronx. She's like, no, I'm in Abu Dhabi. I was like, oh my God. What? Did you take the F? Like, yeah, how did you get to Abu Dhabi, dude? Right? But then there's students that even from my first year who helped me move into my house. So that relationship that Asad, for example, that relationship that we built on that day of being locked out of the house and my landlord, being very landlord-esque, and all of those things actually built really strong relationships. The students that I've done student trips with, right before COVID, we did a trip to New Jersey. We did a trip to Houston with Hannah. In the storm, electricity goes out, and like, tell Jen stories. Oh, I got Jen stories. And they're like, no more Jen stories. I'm like, nope. But like those relationships really that we built in Chicago, the first trip that I went on, student opening up just in front of everybody about like very serious challenges. And those relationships actually become more meaningful, just teaching. What else? Let's hear some more. Everybody's so shy. The question is qualities of an effective religious educator. So we mentioned marrying the heavens to the earth, social competency, and contextualism, like religious foundations. We see that oftentimes both are sacrificed. We talked about personal narratives, they mentioned it. And you had something to the balance. And that comes with age. A lot of that comes with age. Any other questions or ideas on this topic?
The ability to empathize with people. Because I know some religious leaders so in my masjid it's very small community, but we'd have maybe one or two kids who weren't very religiously tradition. They would just their parents would force them to just attend, but it'd kind of be forgotten, And then I feel that it's important for our teachers to be able to empathize and connect with all members of the community.
Yeah, I mean, the Prophet said, "Ana Nabiyyu Rahma." I'm an empathetic prophet. I'm a prophet that embodies empathy. He would stop sometimes, like young people in the mosque, and say, "Wallahi inni uhibbuk," like I love you. You know what I mean? Like you would take an extra step. I think Khalid does a much greater job of this than I do. I tend to be it sounds strange, reclusive person. When I met my wife, it's we could do a drive-by together, basically. That's mashallah, our relationship. It's for the sake of Allah, of course. Our relationship is super tight. And, when I first met her, I was like, what brings you value? She's like, what? I was like, yeah, how can I bring value to you? When you get married, obviously when you marry someone that's going to enhance your well-being. And she was like, I like to be heard. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a speaker, But being Anas says that when the Prophet talked with people, he didn't turn away from it. He didn't look at his phone. That's how we can understand it now. So being, I think, attentive and being empathetic, I think, is important. I learned about empathy as someone who embraced Al-Islam because people tend to live vicariously through converts. So they may not even be very religious, but they're religious through you, And it's a very strange kind of relationship. Hold on, you don't even do, you ain't at Fajr, bro. Tell me how to pray Fajr. Right? And that is where I experienced, at times, I had a wonderful community, largely Desi, because they were all college kids like my age at that time from Karachi, Pakistan, before 9/11. But then in the masjid, it was very different than the MSA. It's very different food. And I got roughed up a few times. Yeah. Excellent. Empathy. Yes, ma'am.
I would say,
Yeah, so Fatima hits something, I think, and this battle doesn't stop though. We live in the West. We are living in the most expensive city in the West, more or less, and everything happens in New York City first. And for me to think that you can also help me with that would be a mistake on my part. Young people teach us how to be energetic. If older people teach us how to be wise and take things slow, well, oftentimes young people teach us to go a little faster. There's a great balance there. But there's no way that I could say I have somehow solved the riddle of not being infected by this virus. Constantly having to check your morality, your ethics. There's a great statement in the Catholic Church, there's no priest in capitalism.
What was that?
There's no priest in capitalism. Everybody's looking to get rich or die trying. So that is something that I think we have to share a narrative through. Share a narrative. But I can share some tricks, at least when I was in college, how I tried to survive that. Anything else? This is amazing, Michelle. But I feel like you guys are holding back. Like, yeah, I want to say it, but I ain't gonna say it. Don't get mad at me. My daughter tells me there's not enough male allies in religious teachings. You go to a mosque and they have a sign, women can't pray. With a prayer room. One time, Miriam, my wife, she's not here, but went to this place and she's like, baby, it's the trash dumpster is by the door, and then there's like rats, like making wudu with you. Rats like, what's up? Like ratatouille, man. And then, that's something that I think we have to be alert to. I think that there's ageism in the community. Sometimes people tend to equate youth with stupidity. That's not, I like to say, no, young people have more of an excuse to be wrong. We don't have an excuse. We've walked down the path now. So you should really invert this kind of rigidness. So I think it's very important to learn that those concerns. Yes, sir. Absolutely. So he's saying, I should know the limits of my own training. And when I first started here, I think it's been 5 years. That's crazy, Kyle. It's been 5 years, man. I came and I started teaching freshmen, and they were learning tafsir, explanation of Quran. And every time they'd ask a question, they'd say, sorry. Sorry. So I said, just hold on, stop. Just stop. Why do you guys keep saying sorry? Right? You're like, well, we don't want to offend you. We don't want to feel like we're challenging you. I was like, what's wrong with that? Like, if you challenge me, that means you're listening. I'd rather have somebody engage in a more robust discussion than people just knocked out in the back because they smashed 25 pounds of fries from Honest Chops, dude. 6 liters of strawberry pop and hot Cheetos. What's wrong with that? So then they kept doing it. They had been programmed to excuse themselves for being inquisitive about their religion. So that's incredibly insane, right? So we have a rule here that I'm going to introduce you to. That is, if you say sorry, you have to donate $5 to Islamic relief. That's the rule. If someone says sorry, or to the ICNYU, you have to make a charitable donation. $5. There's one person sorry, I don't have $5. So they're going to put it on we're going to put it on your tab, right? You have a tab and you go out and get a job. They'll send you the ICNYU $5. But understand that the more you engage, and even the more you critically engage, the better things will be. And I like to, I can't say this to my kids because it's kind of like a conflict of interest, but constructively critical. Right? We live now in a West that is destructively critical. Its approach towards critique is to destroy. That's why people can't, even people of the same persuasions can have conversations now. Whereas, we want to think about how do I benefit someone by mentioning something, right? Not just destroying them. When Allah says to Musa and Harun to speak to Fir'aun qawla layna, speak to him nicely. It's Fir'aun, man, right? Because maybe he will benefit from what you have to say. So I think that's beautiful, man. Thank you. What's your name? Shoaib, thank you. I always get called Shoaib, by the way. Khalid makes a joke about it. But alhamdulillah, Shoaib. And the Prophet said that a third of knowledge is to say, I don't know. And one of my teachers used to say, there'll come a point in time where people ask you a question that you don't know. And if you say you don't know, this means I've taught you well. But if you try to stunt and give some kind of platitudes and big words, and then that means you failed to learn. So appreciating expertise and that we're limited in our ability. That's a great point. Thank you. These are amazing, mashallah. Who else wants to? I'm getting excited for this semester. Yes, Suhaila.
Yeah, maybe giving students kind of like a spiritual toolkit to, because usually you hear like the same thing. It's like have patience, but it's like it doesn't really explain and kind of take it.
Yeah, and I think added to that is like we have here great resources at the ICU. We have Hala, I think, has moved on, but we have people right that are I forgot her name. So we're hiring actually 200 people that are that's what they do at a clinical level. But then also my job would be to explain it through the perspective of theology. What are we being resilient of? Like whenever you hear that, it's like just be patient. But what am I being patient about? So I agree. I think having that toolkit, and we read actually every Tuesday night, we're reading a really good text, man, by Imam Ghazali that hits on like these are the 7 things that are going to stop you from living a life of faith. Like here they are, boom. And one of them is like the crap hits the fan. You get wet samosas, right? When you burn the rice. Right? My wife's mother's from Iran. If you burn the rice, it's a capital offense. So I just don't cook the rice. It's like I can do some Uncle Ben's. What? But like absolute understanding what are bad things are. Afflictions, challenges, difficult, success also. Wonderful. Who else wants to chime in? This is really important. Yes, sir. And your name, sir? No one. No, I'm nice to meet you. We're going to get to that in a second. So topics. You guys are going to choose the topics I'll talk about. I'm not going to choose them. Again, yeah, I try to tell masjid sometimes I do consulting for masajid. I say, like, let the people tell you what they want, and then nobody can blame you. Like, but when you try to do everything on your own, of course, then you're going to take all the criticism. But also, it makes you better at what you do, right? When you're responding to the request of the people. We, again in Boston, we created, when I was there, this idea of a listening mosque. And how do you become a listen? How does the minbar listen? Not just give the khutbah, how do you listen to people? And I got a lot of challenges initially with that, even from the people. But that led to some great transformative work. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to chime in? Yes, sir. Yeah.
I think I agree with your good, really good. Sometimes it's just like they're like, oh, you heard this this way. So people think us as part of that, and guilt will use rather than guilt for things. They go hand in hand, but often
Absolutely. And again, so I'm not here as a leader, I'm here as an educator, just to separate the two. We talked about this a few weeks ago in Imam Ghazali's writing. He says, guilt is good as long as it leads to inspiration. But there's a sense of like my wife and I are doing this crazy diet right now. So she's like, what are you eating in New York? I'm like, right? That's a healthy sense of guilt. It's not like you're the worst husband in the world. God curse you by click. That's not guilt. That's aggressive behavior. And that's also trying to control people. And also he says that hope is good as long as it leads to inspiration. Because sometimes we get too happy, we get gassed up, and we get, I'm fine, I'm good, everything's fine, I'm great. There needs to be this balance. So I like to use the word responsibility instead of guilt or even hope. Like what leads to responsibility? Like what leads to being a responsible person? I think is more of a healthy framework, but that's important. Thank you. And we know, the Prophet ﷺ, there was a man that he used to even sit and laugh with, who was an alcoholic. And one time he came to the mosque intoxicated. And he said to the prophet, like, where's the prophet? Like, why would an intoxicated person feel so empowered? The first person they could ask for is the prophet. Me, at 49 years old, the last person I'm going to go to is the imam. Honestly. Right? Because he knows that he's not going to be destroyed. And then people begin to ridicule him, and the prophet said, like, don't help Shaitan destroy your brother. Made a mistake, man. He's addressed his mistake. Now let's keep stepping. So I think these are great. That's a great point. Thank you. A few more, and then we're going to move on to something else. We'll be done. Yes, sir. Sorry. So in general, because I get also the other complaint that I mentioned too many names and too many texts and too many pages and too many places. So in general, all of the information that I share will be authentic. Just that you don't have to necessarily worry about all that. And then, the majority of those resources are going to be in languages that may be difficult for people to access. But I think the general rule would be, as I'm trained, and it's important to realize most of your imams are trained. And this is the danger of Salafism and the attack of kind of that school, is that it caused people to doubt their teachers. But of course, most of our trained teachers are going to hopefully share things. But I'll most definitely, if you ask me, I'll have that. I appreciate that's a good point. Yes, Fatima.
Right? Like they will say like, oh, you're supposed to do this, but like if you look at it, it's not.
Got it. Okay. So then you want to ask questions. So like, feel free to ask. Like, where's that from? I don't. Yeah, and so that's something that can't really relate to, because I'm a white dude from Oklahoma, right? Nobody's fighting about brisket being the sunnah, right? Or like ribeye being mustahab. Like nobody's arguing about this, right? So you have to kind of help me understand that in certain ways, because that's something that I'm not going to bring like drinking alcohol into like Islam and say that's culturally acceptable. So that's something that's a blind spot for me as a teacher. I think Khalid does a great job of, because he comes from like Pakistani background. When we embraced Islam, it was about moving away from those negative aspects of our life. Doesn't mean that we've done it perfectly by any means. It's a lifelong process. But thank you. That's important. And there are also people sometimes who do use shoddy resources. I've come across before. Anyone else want to jump in? Or we move on to one more thing. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so I know that we've done in the past like numerous programs here on mental health issues like regularly, right? Mashallah. So that's something that's kind of a regular staple at the IC. And then I think, again, it's important that you like suggest things, like, specifically like, hey, can we do something on this topic, right? This is a place where, mashallah, people are actually invigorated to do what you suggest. And we're used to, I remember, so here's the story. I think someone told me personal narrative. I think it was Zainab. So I used to walk to this masjid that was right by campus. And I would study at the masjid in the daytime. It was probably the size that a masjid is half of this room. Very small student community. And there was an older man who had a youth halaqah every Friday night. And for me, Friday night was the getaway, right? That's the city I was born and raised in. So, the city that you're born and raised in, if you were at one time out in the world, is always calling you back. So where do you go? And one of the older guys used to say, like, dialysis is in the masjid. Like, that's where you go to kind of. So I go to the masjid, and like on Friday night, I learned how to play cricket, mashallah. I hit a few sixers. I cheated though. And but it was like a great time. We used to play PlayStation 2. It's how back in the days it was. So I go to the masjid, and there was this guy. He was teaching these kids. They were like 10, 11 years old. And every week it was the same 5 letters from the Arabic alphabet. Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, Jim, Ha, Fa. Every week. And so I was like, oh, wow. And I wanted to learn Arabic. So like I joined. I want to learn Arabic. So I'm sitting there, Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha. And then I'm like, we've been doing Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, Ha for like 4 months, man. So then I said to him, dearest uncle, like, I think you got to mix it up, bro. Like, he's like a remix or something. And then I got yelled at. And then I said, honestly, I think you should let like the college students teach these guys because we're closer to them in age. And like, it's just going to be more, like, we're going to have more things in common. And I got hammered. And I never forgot that. So here, even people might not agree with you, right? You may have a suggestion, doesn't mean suddenly it's going to get done. But they'll talk with you about, like, maybe why not. And you'll be able to say, well, this is maybe why, instead of it just being like, why you don't know anything. So this issue of mental health is so important. I think this is a gift of Generation Z. I didn't think, man, my parents didn't talk to me about being triggered. My parents were the generation, like, if you don't stop crying, you'll cry more, right? Like, very different. That's not good, man. Like, I love my parents, but it's just not a good way to teach somebody. And then we wonder why people are not emotionally mature. And one of the beautiful things that, the younger millennials and Generation Z has brought up is like thinking about triggering behavior, thinking about how we lead to people not feeling comfortable. So I suggest that you like just bring it. Like, hey, these are like 3 or 4 things that are very important to us that we want to talk to. And I found this community to be one that's very receptive. Yes, sir.
What's the stat recap them and how they want that going on, anything to go through afterwards,
Anyone else? These are really incredible suggestions. We're going to do this from time to time, but we'll do it a little differently because it's important that we check in. Your life is going to start to change in drastic ways. Even if you've been in school for a while, like every year is it's like a roller coaster. Things come and go. You encounter intellectual challenges, physiological challenges. You may fall in love. You know what I mean? All these kind of things happen in college. You may go broke, right? You may begin to feel like autonomous from your parents in ways that you never felt before. It's very normal. But that's a scary place to be sometimes. And my daughter said, I want to be without you, but I'm scared to. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be my own person in the sense of grow into adulthood, emergent adulthood. This is years ago. But then at the same time, I'm used to having 6'5" dad. And I said, no, baby, this is good for you. And good for me too, thank God. I want to spend time with my wife. But there's a lot that happens. And then it's happening in the backdrop of COVID-19, in the backdrop of a shattered America, right? Your generation is the first that can't option into global climate change issues, right? It's just like being forced. So it's a lot happening. Any other suggestions? These are really, really meaningful. For myself, yes, sir. Yeah, and of course, I think the first few months as you settle in, where's back home for you? India. Where in India? Nice, nice, man. Welcome, alhamdulillah. Um, so I think that that's a normal process. Like even today, I was running around looking at apartments. I had to go to the library, had to do this, had to meet Omar, had to come here, had to call my wife, checking on my kids. And I was like, oh man, I didn't pray namaz yet, you know? That happens. And there are times we can join prayers within the Sunni tradition, as long as it's not, especially the Maliki tradition that I'm trained in, as long as it's not consistent. I think the other thing is you want to, like I'm sure today I saw the pictures at the Fajr prayer, they just look really incredible, right? When you do things together, man, it brings added value. So what we used to do in MSA is we had a Fajr call line. We'd like call each other. Yeah, and that's a very real fear. So number one is be determined, right? Nothing can make you who you don't want to be. So you want to be like, I am who I am. This is a non-negotiable for me. And then secondly is to have a supporting cast and a structure that can support those values. So what we used to have is a Fajr call line. It was automated, especially for Fajr. It's like if you make Fajr, the rest are easy. That's always been my. But like when you miss Fajr, it's like, yo, I miss Fajr. So I'm on a miss streak. But that's why we did that, and it like helped brothers. And then here at NYU, you have like almost every campus. There's a place to pray. Right, Tandon here, the dental school, so many. I think a few other places. Right, there are places to pray. So now what we'll do is we're gonna wind it up in a minute. I just want to say thank you for like sharing, and I hope I can continue to be better. Be patient with me too. Teaching is never easy, and the way that we teach here is work, in the sense of that we want to be invested in people. Not just like, okay, here's what the Quran says, here's the hadith, nice thing, everybody, see y'all later. So we try to invest in our education, in educational endeavors. Are there any just general questions? Anything, any personal questions? Now's the time to ask me anything about myself, about Khalid. I have a lot of information to share, mashallah. Hannah, I got all the dirt. I have a teapot actually for Hannah. But any questions that you have about anything, and then we'll close it out, inshallah. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So my role here is in the educational kind of field is three. So one is I teach Wagner with Sheikh Fayaz, a course on Islamic law ethics. That's my background. My specialty was in Islamic law. The second is I do kind of the broader, like wide public classes. And so the public class that we have now is reading through a book called Minhaj al-Abidin of Imam Ghazali, which is really about these 7 hurdles that you're going to run into as you try to live a faithful life. So then and this is like one of the last books he wrote. He died, he's now 55 years old. So he talks about like, how do you deal with it? So it's nice. He brings it to like a practical kind of level. And then on Thursdays, we're wrapping up a public class where there were some people that had learned how to read Arabic and then learned like tajweed. And we're going to move into potentially a class, Islam for Muslims. We always do Islam for non-Muslims. But where is Islam for Muslims? Like, where we introduce like the 3 foundational components of what Islam is to people. Especially now, it's common to find non-Muslims that are often more conversant on Islam than Muslims. Because of this 20-year war on terror was also 20 years of us as a community being considered like a 5th column. Communities in New York City were mapped by the police department. There's a history of heavy-handed legal and federal engagement with the Muslim community, which really does violate the separations clause this country has. Been a lot of pressure. So it's important that we're conversant for ourselves. These are the questions that I always wanted to know, right? And then I'm able to be conversant. So I think we may start something on Thursdays called Islam for Muslims. And then I have private classes. Suhaila was part of that first kind of pilot. Omar now is reviewing his Quran. Akbar for a while was coming for people. I prefer like at least 3 people just because you can scale. Right? If it's like one person, it's good, but usually they come, they flake. You know, after a month or 2, they're gone, and you're like, man, other people could have been here. So I prefer it to at least be like 3 people, and we'll put out an announcement through the ISMYU about how you can kind of take part. And then I do also like seminars, monthly kind of seminars that are geared towards like specific. Like last year we did like. Now we think about vaccines. It's weird. We did this topic. We did a topic on the communal good. One of the goals of Islamic law is to establish communal good. So now a vaccine debate would fall under the idea of what's good for the broader community. We did one on, we did quite a few last year actually. But so those kind of like one-day seminar type things as well. And then like the most important thing is just like people coming and saying like, what about this? I have a question about this. So I function also. I think that's the more, you always find me sitting usually in the masjid or, walking around somewhere. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, feelings?
I know someone, I forget the name, the one from Mumbai. Yeah, Khalid, yeah, I know Khalid said he was having trouble with establishing Salah regularly. I also had a similar problem with being able to read Quran and memorize Quran, but I'm having trouble finding the time and place to be able to do that, living in a dorm and stuff.
So I memorized the Quran in college, right? I worked full time. I did a degree in education, which wasn't too difficult, right? But it did require a lot of time. Like I had to be on campus and teaching and grading papers till like 3 in the morning. So I can, share with you some things that may help. One of the things is that usually people try to do too much. It's almost like when people go to the gym, and they see like whatever celebrity, or they see a TikTok video or someone, climbs 5,000 milk cartons. Are we doing that later tonight, by the way? Milk carton challenge? I can do one. But so my experience is people try to do too much, and then they even get mad at me. So I'm like, hey, like you don't have to do like 2 verses a week. Like, no, do 2 pages. Like, no, man, you just do like 2 verses. It's all good. Don't worry, just do 2 verses, right? Because if they get 2 verses strong, then they get their confidence up. Most of it, I would say, memorizing the Quran is confidence. It's confidence. People can do a lot more than they think they can. One of the goals of kind of capitalism is to make people so insecure that they can't achieve except without the crutches of goods they buy in stores. So in many ways, we're all like drug addicts to this stuff. Whereas Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. You've been equipped. Like there's some serious hardware in you. There's some serious software that's written on that hard drive. And it just has to be structured. So I encourage people to do like 2 verses. Just do 2 verses like every 2 weeks.
What about like a place for you?
So I sit with people, Omar inshallah, so hopefully he's going to be helping out. We can listen to people read. Mariama was here. I don't know if, is Dunya still on? Hudina still on? Hudina, so Hudina's here. Alhamdulillah, we have people that can listen and help you. And learning to read the Quran, I believe, is a very important rite of passage as a Muslim. Right? And it shouldn't be intimidating. Like we should have like legit, like they do it in the Desi community, have like the Yasin party, right? In Malaysia, I've seen it. Like, we should celebrate this. It's a great accomplishment, but learning to read well is not hard. And learning to read correctly is not difficult. But people tend to make their religious imagination tends to make things like much more difficult than they really are. So that's why it's good to have like a personal trainer. I like to tell imams and teachers, like, you're like tech support now. How do you function as tech support? Keep people going. I used to have a student, Abdurrahim, he memorized the Quran with me in Washington Square Park. Like, just to position and memorizing the Quran in Washington Square Park was amazing, right? Afraz was here. He learned like tajweed correctly in less than a semester. We'll do something maybe as well, like a workshop based on, like, here's how you learn how to read the Quran. We have a really cool class on reading Arabic the easy way. It's not hard, because that stuff is intimidating, man. We posit these things in the community in a place where it's not good. Like, we shouldn't tell people this is impossible. The Quran says we made the Quran easy for you. Right? It just needs a little effort and time. So look for that email. Anything else before we? If there's another program, I think there's food or something.
You're welcome back.
Nice. Yeah, ICYU will feed you. That's for sure. They will feed you. Make sure you join the gym. COVID was already a challenge, you know what I'm saying? But most definitely. So I think there's one thing I'll share with you then, from a perspective of like, learning. And again, I welcome all of you here into my life. We're now sharing a life together. That's how we should read. It's a beautiful thing. That Allah has brought us together in different places, different situations, different circumstances. And we all have wisdom. There's things that we've all experienced that collectively we can really help one another. And there's a great story in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that kind of encapsulates this moment for me and the approach that you shared with me that I hope I can. And again, call me to task. If you remember the things that you suggested and you see me not doing it, kindly and empathetically remind me. Right? But in the time of the Prophet, before he was a prophet, the Prophet earned social capital before he earned religious capital. Oftentimes, religious communities and religious teachers, we talked about this earlier, they think that their religious bona fides or their religious belief equates to social capital. But that's not the case. Social capital is earned. And the Prophet, what's his name? Before they called him Nabi, what did they call him? What was he known as? Amin. So he was Amin before he was Nabi. He was trusted before he was a prophet. The neighborhoods that you live in New York City, right, have a khutbah, how not to be a gentrifier. Should be jinn with a J. Jinn, gentrifier. Right? How do you do that? That demands investment into my neighborhood. That demands investment the people that I live with. There's a study that shows in the face of catastrophe, we just saw this hurricane in Louisiana, that people who know their neighbors have a greater chance of living. They know each other. So the Prophet ﷺ earns people's trust, and then he steps into a religious situation. And during his lifetime before he's a prophet, and we have to appreciate that the prophet's early life is really about managing tragedy. You want to talk about tragedy? He lost his dad, lost his mom, lost his grandfather, lost his uncle, lost his wife, lost his city. Like, the theme of the early life of the prophet is how do you deal with loss? It's really what the message is. It's a tragedy. And in his time, to face those social odds in 6th, 7th century, I mean, it's almost impossible for a child to survive, but he survives. and he earns people's trust. He's able, through his sincerity and his fidelity and his vulnerability and his honesty, to be someone that people realize that I can trust this person. I hope I can earn your trust and you can earn my trust. I don't give my trust to everybody. I'm not going to be honest. My cipher is very tight. As you get older, your friends become less because you realize, sometimes people can be a problem. So you tighten that cipher, as we say. But the Prophet ﷺ, when he walks into the masjid and they're arguing over where to place stone after the Quraysh, the Kaaba was destroyed in the flood, they come together, they want to rebuild the Kaaba, the tribe of the Prophet, the Quraysh. And the word Quraysh is from Qirsh, which is a shark, because they're tough people. They're like sharks. They are arguing over something really mundane. And how does the Prophet solve the problem? As an organizer, as a trusted person? He gets everybody involved. The Prophet ﷺ could have just picked up the stone and put it in there by himself, like, we're out, peace, it's been real. But why does he create social and communal utility, where everybody feels responsible and everybody shares in there? So he asked them to lift up a blanket. They all hold it. They lift up the stone, and he puts the stone where it belongs. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Our role is to hold the blanket as we try to craft the narrative of your experiences here at the IC. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate and bless those experiences.
If you would like to listen to more, please donate to www.icnyu.org/donate. For more of our virtual programs, go to www.icnyu.org/classes. If you have any questions, email us at info@icnyu.org.